Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us to our first virtual town hall. Before we get started, first I want to thank all our candidates for being here to the right of me as you're seeing it. And I also want to introduce Lisa Dullum. She's going to say some stuff before we get started, just about Lafayette Indivisible and some stuff to be on the lookout for.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I just want to tell you a little bit about Greater Lafayette Indivisible and who we are. So we are a local grassroots organization, and we're committed to fighting for progressive policies, registering American voters, and demystifying congressional advocacy. Our goals include holding our elected officials accountable to constituents, increasing voter participation, and promoting justice, equality, and inclusion. We are not affiliated with any political party, and we are part of one of over 6,000 local groups in the National Indivisible movement that started at the end of 2016. If you haven't already, I hope that you will like our Facebook page, follow our Twitter account and our Instagram account, and we also have a website, LafayetteIndivisible.com. I did want to bring your attention to a couple of activities that we're going to be having, and Matt's going to talk about more of them at the end of this. But we are having regular virtual happy hours every Friday at 6 o'clock, and you can find out information there on our Facebook page, and it's a Zoom account just for your information. And we're also going to be, this hasn't been announced yet, but we're about ready to announce a letter writing party, a virtual letter writing party using Vote Forward, and that's going to be on April 14th at 7:30 p.m. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you, Lisa. Before we get started, I just want to let everybody know kind of what the ground rules and how we'll get started. We'll give each candidate 2 minutes to answer the questions, and they'll also have a 2-minute opener and closer. We do have a timekeeper, and we're all going to leave a lot of time for questions from you at the end. So if you have any questions, leave them in the Facebook chat. We're going to be gathering those and asking those at the end. And before we get started, actually, let's just get started and introduce everybody. We'll start with Ben, and we'll go down the list alphabetically. So Ben, your 2-minute opener.
Hi, I'm Ben Frederick. I'm a Hoosier born and raised. I've lived in Hendricks County for the last 20 years now. I went to school at DePauw for computer science. I've got an MBA. Part of my story is that in 2012, my wife was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and we fought very long and hard against that. She always encouraged me to do more, to give back more, and she encouraged me to run for Congress. She passed in 2018, and I really wanted to devote some time to giving back and ensuring that healthcare is available so that people who don't have that kind of access, the kind of access that we had, and we had okay insurance, that everyone has that kind of access, or quite frankly, much better access. No one should ever have to choose between food and rent and life-saving medication, even life-prolonging medication. It's my belief that healthcare is a human right, and we should have every moment to spend with our loved ones as possible.
Thanks, Ben. We'll go to Joe.
Thank you, Matt. I'd like to thank Tippecanoe County Indivisible for hosting this town hall. These are very trying times. I'd like to thank my fellow candidates for attending tonight. I think this is eminently, it's so important to be able to reach out and speak to constituents around the 4th Congressional District. I've been doing that now in this campaign since late August. We have been in all 16 counties. We have been speaking to people across a broad range of issues. Healthcare, of course, is something I'm deeply concerned about. but public school education is also on the list. Our environment is on the list. Job opportunities brought about by green infrastructure development. We need these programs. There are so many reasons right now to be engaged with your candidates. So to the viewers out there this evening, thank you for attending this town hall. And I look forward to a really productive opportunity to engage.
Thanks, Joe. And we'll go to Veronica.
Hi, I'm Veronica Azol, running for obviously 4th District here in Indiana. Wanted to thank Lafayette Indivisible, obviously, for putting this on tonight. A little bit about myself. I can tout myself. I'm a woodworker. I'm hazmat trained, mechanically inclined DIYer. I've ran that back in 2018. My campaign slogan then was clean, fix, build. Clean up the waste, fix what's broken, build a better future. My focus a lot is on healthcare, jobs, income inequality, all of that. I am a working class candidate. I'm running to support the working class people that are not being represented by our current Congress, by our current administration. They're all for the big business, the big money man. Nobody is out there for the small guy, the little person, the working class. I want to be that person. I am that person. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So we'll get started on the questions. These questions were compiled from members of the Greater Lafayette Indivisible membership. And so for our first one, thing that's probably on everybody's mind right now is COVID-19 and everything that's really interrupted and changed the way that we live our lives. One of the most important things, even before all this, it was healthcare. And so what we're asking the candidates is, can you commit to supporting Medicare for all? And if you can, tell why. And if you can't, please give your reason as well. And we'll start in the same order, but we'll change it up as we go. So Ben, we'll start with you.
Absolutely, I can commit to supporting Medicare for all. I think that the first thing that has to happen is we need a public health option, which we don't currently have that available. Some of those things have to be a gradual change. It would take a lot to upend the entire insurance industry, but I think Medicare for all is a wonderful long-term goal. The first thing we need to make sure is that everyone has access to health care.
Joe?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were finished. If you have more to say, go ahead.
That's all right.
All right, Joe.
Thank you, Matt. One of the issues that I take with the buy-in option is that it does nothing to serve children. Children should be automatically incorporated. My position on this is born into healthcare, not buy-in. Healthcare is a human right. So many other developed nations, of the 33 developed nations, we are the only one without a single payer system. While Europeans and those with single payer systems are enjoying 40% less cost than the American consumer. We're seeing every year more and more consumers being driven out of the healthcare market. Why? Because it's a market. It's driven by profit. We don't have a healthcare system in the United States. We have a healthcare market. That market has become predatory, and the American consumer is the prey. It is time to take healthcare out of the hands of middlemen and put it back where it belongs, in the hands of doctors. Doctors should be driving our healthcare, not insurance companies.
Thanks, Joe. And Veronica.
Thank you. I was supporting Medicare for all back in 2018. I still support it today. Other people say, oh, it's going to take time to do this. It's going to take, it's going to need to be done gradually. We've had now, in the past 3 weeks, 2.5 times the population of the state of Indiana filing for unemployment, which means they have lost their job-based healthcare company, health insurance, which means we need to do something immediately. We cannot wait. We need to start doing a buy-in. back in 2018, the numbers were 4% was basically what the numbers were. We could go up 5%, even if we went up 10%. 10% of our income for taxes. I'm admitting that taxes will go up, but 10% of income, median income in the 4th district is $30,000. That'd be $3,000. Current health insurance premiums, I know myself, I have $400 a month. That's $4,800 a year. $3,000 taxes, Medicare for all, pays for healthcare for everyone. You have a social security number, congratulations, you now have healthcare. That's what we can do. We can get it done tomorrow if we had the courage to do so. And so, yes, I support Medicare for all. And I think we can get it done now, not 3 years from now, not 10 years from now, today. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Going off of healthcare, we have a couple more questions, especially because this is such a broad topic. We're only going to scratch the surface. And just to the audience, too, if there's anything that I don't cover or we didn't cover, please put it in the chat, and we will come to it at the end. Thank you. So our next question is, so the CDC data shows that Black people are dying at a higher rate from COVID-19 than non-Black people. Likewise, Black maternal mortality rates are much higher than white maternal mortality rates in Indiana and across the U.S. What policies do you support to end racialized impacts on healthcare? And this time, we'll start with Veronica.
Well, simply put, a lot of them, minority groups are often underrepresented, often underemployed. Therefore, with our current system tying healthcare, health insurance to job prospects, minority people are often in lower income jobs. I was out doing the grocery shopping that needed to be done the other day and going along and seeing a large number of minority people that were not wearing masks or any kind of protective gear. And it's a sad state that I have to admit that I understand it, that, a white person can walk into a store with a mask on. You get an African-American person walking into a store with a mask on, people unfortunately are going to panic. They're unable to protect themselves. The problem is healthcare disproportionately, or lack of access to healthcare disproportionately affects minority and poorer people, and that's what we need to get corrected. We need to fix that.
All right. Joe?
Thank you, Matt. The racial disparities that we're seeing are systemic. They're institutional. They seem to they are built in to the very institutions we rely on. One of the greatest challenges that we have where our minority communities are concerned is access to higher education, which is no longer affordable. So we are narrowing the avenues of opportunity to thrive in this country. We've stolen away the American dream. We need to make access to education far more affordable. We need to give people health care. There are so many things out there that some of them, even if we start tackling it tomorrow, it's going to take a great deal of leadership from both the House, the Senate, and the White House to begin addressing these institutional racism that we see. I've certainly seen it. I was 2 years ago. I was up in Hobart at an event that Joe Biden and Joe Donnelly were attending. And I walked into this building, and I traveled from Lafayette, so I was about an hour earlier than I should have been. And I walked right in. I had a suit and jacket on, walked right past a number of police officers, security. Right behind me came a gentleman dressed similar to me who was Black, and he was stopped and told, if you're not part of the campaign, you have to go outside. And it took them a good 30 minutes to decide that maybe I wasn't with a campaign before they insisted I step outside. So we see this happening. and we need to become more conscious of it. And that consciousness is raised with education. So I think education is very much a key here, but opportunity as well. Education opens the door to greater, broader opportunities to lead. We can certainly, as the Democratic Party, make this happen. I think that it's the doorway to changing that systemic racism that we know exists, the institutional racism.
Thanks, Joe. And then we'll finish with Ben.
I do agree. This is absolutely an issue of institutionalized and predispositions. When I worked for Goodwill of Central and Southern Indiana, we saw a lot of benefits to granting access and helping people get access to education. Running high schools and helping people get not their GED, but a proper high school diploma, saw their income levels raise, and it saw their opportunity levels raise, which in turn, of course, will see opportunities for things like better healthcare, better continuing education, better education for their children, and breaking that cycle. But again, it has to start with making sure that people have access to the tools that they need, whether those tools are healthcare, whether those tools are education, whatever we can do to make people's lives better. And of course, a lot of that comes down to finances as well. As Veronica said, the median income is $30,000, but if you're making a lot less than $30,000, that makes it a lot tougher to get things like healthcare. It makes it tougher to get things like quality education. We have to start removing those imbalances in the system and making sure that people have access to high quality education for themselves and for their children, as well as having high quality access to healthcare for themselves. Again, if you're not working, then you're not being a productive member of society. And if you're sick, you're probably not working. That's what we're seeing right now. People are getting sick. They're unable to work. At some point, it doesn't even matter what your race is. But yes, minorities are affected more. And we have to make sure that everyone, especially minorities, have more access.
Thanks, everyone. For our next question, we're still going to stay on healthcare, but we're going to change the focus a bit. So the next question is, do you support sexual autonomy and the right to choose whether to have an abortion or not? We're going to start with Joe on this one.
Absolutely, Matt. I think it's incumbent that the relationship between patient and doctor stay private and remain between a doctor and the patient. I think we have to trust women to make those choices for their bodies and themselves that they see is in their best interest. We certainly don't have to be pro-abortion to understand that pro-choice is a constitutional right. And I intend to stand by the decision in Roe v. Wade. I intend to see to it that women remain in control of their bodies and their health care. And I intend to see to it that the health care they need is provided. So yes, I would support this. Thank you.
Go to Veronica.
I can honestly say, that an abortion is not something that I would ever choose for myself. But that said, I'm not going to deny anyone else that right. I firmly believe that all medical care, again, with a Medicare for all system, a single payer system, all medical care would be decided between the patient and the doctor. Yes, abortions are medical care. Other matters for LGBT people. I support PrEP. I support transitioning for trans people. All of that is a private medical issue. And yes, I mean, absolutely, that's where it should be. To that end, I would also add that I would say that I would fight against the Hyde Amendment if we were to push forth a full Medicare for all, because that does block low income, going back to with the racial disparity, low income people from being able to access the same medical care for abortion usage.
Thanks. And Ben.
I 100% support a woman's right to choose. I'm a proud supporter of Planned Parenthood. Again, I agree. Roe v. Wade is the law of the land, and we have to fight to make sure that it stays the law of the land, that women have full access to do what they need to do to survive. Now, again, Joe, you said no one's pro-abortion, and that's right. No one is pro-abortion. We're all pro-choice. Abortion should be safe, it should be legal, and it should be rare. We should also make sure that we're encouraging proper habits and proper education in our schools to make sure that people use appropriate methods so that abortion can be rare. The current administration would rather tout abstinence only, which makes absolutely no sense. We all are human, we're alive. We know that people are going to be sexually active. And if we can make sure that we have proper education, proper materials, and full access to those materials, whether it's birth control, whether it's prophylactic condoms, whatever the necessity, whatever access we need, making sure that abortion is rare, but it's safe and it's legal when it needs to happen.
Thanks, everyone. We're going to go on to things. All these are related. I think that everyone can agree. But I want to focus more on right now things that have to do with our current situation, especially now. Like I said before, COVID-19 is changing the game in terms of how we view jobs, how we view our relationship to our workplaces, and how we view our relationship to our bosses, our livelihoods. And so we've seen this before COVID-19, but the wealth inequality gap is massive, and it keeps growing, especially now. And I'm curious about what policies that you support to rectify the issues of income and wealth inequality. And we'll start with Ben.
Well, I think a large portion of that goes back to education, and it goes back to healthcare, making sure that people have access so that they're not bankrupted by something like cancer, by something like a major medical procedure. All it takes is one to destroy someone's life. Making sure that we have access to those appropriate levels of medical care for everyone means that people will have freedom and flexibility to do the work that they need and want to do. Now, again, taking that a little bit further, making sure that we have access to high quality education, regardless of wealth level, means that our children and our children's children will have appropriate and high levels of access to knowledge and to become high-level earners in whatever their field of choice is. It shouldn't be a matter of you were born into privilege, so therefore you can be a doctor or lawyer. Anyone should have those opportunities as long as they have the abilities. With that having been said, there is nothing wrong with not being a doctor and not being a lawyer. The world needs bartenders, as I well know. The world needs people to make sure that their cars run. There are high-paying jobs in every profession, and getting access to not only college education, but training and certifications where appropriate will raise the overall income levels of everyone in the country.
We'll go to Veronica.
Well, it's more than just education. Yeah, you can get an education. That's not where jobs should be tied to, or job worth in income shouldn't be tied to that. We're seeing it now here, where so many of these jobs that in years past had been deemed low skill are suddenly now thrust into being essential. Grocery store workers, janitorial staff, food service workers, all of these people, they are out there basically right now on the front lines, putting their lives basically in danger at the threat of this pandemic to do their jobs. And at best, some of them are getting minimum wage. which, if you look historically, FDR said that a minimum wage should basically be a minimum to live on. Therefore, our minimum wage needs to be a living wage. For that, I'm proud to say I'm fight for $15 minimum wage. That's where we would be if minimum wage had kept up with inflation. Had it kept up with worker productivity, it would be well over $20 an hour right now. So I firmly believe fight for $15 an hour minimum wage should be for any job. That's your entry level. You get better, you get higher up the food chain, so to speak, you get higher up the seniority. Yes, your pay goes up, but that's where we should be. Need to bring from the bottom up, the phrasing of a rising tide lifts all boats. That's where it is. Not top down, bottom up. You could have the best shingles in the world on your house, but if the foundation isn't there, it's coming down. And we're seeing that with this pandemic right now, that the house is falling apart.
Thanks. And then Joe.
Thank you. The first thing that I would like to address here in terms of wage is right to work must go. We must end right to work. Right to work has driven wages down, has cut benefits, has eliminated, it's killing the middle class. It is not good for the American workforce. It's not good for American labor. We need to strengthen unions and the opportunity for people to form and join unions. These are fundamental to basic middle class health, not healthcare, but the health of the middle class. It opens the doors for opportunities. Secondly, we need to revisit the 2015 Fair Jobs and Tax Act. We need to repeal those tax breaks for the top 1%. We need to eliminate carried interest. Those who are blessed with much are expected much from. We need to establish a fair share tax system that does not favor the top 1%. We understand, Americans understand, that economies are driven from the bottom up. It's not large corporations that drive our economy. It's small businesses and small consumers that are driving the economy. And that's very apparent today. Veronica did a good job pointing out the job losses that we've had. These are the consumers that drive our economy, and they are now out of work. We need to put a floor under this problem. We cannot keep cutting taxes on the top 1% and then cutting away at the safety net that FDR and Democrats who followed have built. So we need to strengthen the safety net. We need to eliminate right to work. We need to give employees an opportunity to have a voice in their workplace. We also need to see to it they have an opportunity to earn. $15 an hour is not too much to ask of Jeff Bezos and his Amazon employees. He's making good money. They should make good money. This is how America was built. This is how we built the middle class in the 50s. Employees shared in the benefits of the wealth that was generated. That is being lost more and more. And what you're seeing is that wealth is being kept at the top, and those at the bottom are losing. They're losing wages. They're losing incentives. They're losing benefits. We are quickly now, we have moved into a gig economy where even those with college educations have no guaranteed future. So we're seeing those.
Thanks, Joe.
Cheers.
So I'm actually, that was one of the questions that I was going to bring up before, and I'll ask it to the other two. Right to work has been such a, I would say, devastating thing to happen to this state and a lot of other states. So playing off that last question, do both of you or either of you support repealing right to work and other union busting legislation? Ben?
That's something I'm not an expert on that subject. I think the unions have done a lot to build up our country. And again, I'm not an expert on that subject. I will become one and have a better answer for you the next time you ask me.
Veronica?
I agree to a point with the right to work people in the fact that I should not be forced to join a union to get a job. That said, if I choose to join the union, that's my business, that's my right to do so. And if I pay dues from day one, the whole premise of probationary employees, there's a lot of businesses that will do that, what are called probationary employees, and within 90 days they'll fire you, get rid of you, no questions asked, you have no recourse. If I've been paying the union dues from day one, the union should fight for me. I support, and that's it, I fully support unions. I believe they're a good thing, and that's the thing. If I don't join the union, though, in that respect, because I shouldn't have to join one to get a job, then in that respect, I also agree at that point in time that the union should not be responsible for negotiating on my behalf. So I agree with repealing right to work. They had a modicum of an idea there that it was a kernel of a good idea. Unfortunately, they took it and ran with it as busting the unions, which is when it turned bad. So, I mean, I support unions. I support anybody who wants to join a union to better their life for it. All the more power to them. I fully support unions. I do think I shouldn't have to be forced to join it to get the job, but, you know, leave it up to the worker in that respect, but don't bust them. So.
Thank you. And continuing on the economic inequality, especially because our group is located in Lafayette, in West Lafayette, and we have the university right here. And so we have a lot of students. We have people who are students in the group, and we also have a lot of people who are newly graduated or have graduated recently. And one of the biggest, most significant debts used to be, you know, your home, your car, and now it's student loans and student debt. And a lot of times we were promised, if you go get this job or you go get trained, you go get education, it'll pay for itself. And that's just proven to not be true. People are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And so it's such a significant problem. Can you commit to supporting student loan forgiveness or lowered rates? And we'll start with Veronica.
Oh, absolutely. Student loan forgiveness. The price of education has grown astronomically over these years. I've seen it myself going for my degree, which I admit I still do not presently have because the price of the degree became super cost prohibitive. People asked me, why don't you, take out loans, finish your degree? And my response to them when they would ask me that was, does that degree 100% guarantee that I'm going to get a job that I can afford to pay those loans back? And their answer always was no. And I'm like, then why would I do that? So I fully agree that absolutely student loans, student debt forgiveness we need to figure out a way to bring the cost of education down. It has gotten to be ridiculously exorbitant. What is it now? It's like in some places, even in state schools, it's the price of a small car, family sedan for 1 year of education. That's absolutely ridiculous. We need to make education not for profit. It needs to be education for bettering ourselves. So I fully support student loan debt forgiveness. Absolutely.
Thank you. We'll go to Ben.
100%. When my father went to school in the late 60s and early 70s, he was able to pay for his entire college education at DePauw University, which I think we all know is a very expensive school today, just through summer jobs. I went to DePauw and wound up with $80,000 in student loan debt. I also worked summer jobs, but that was nowhere near enough to pay for my education. My father got a social working degree. If he had gotten that degree today, he would be in debt for the rest of his life. In fact, my wife was a social worker as well. Her degree we were paying for and still owed student loans on up until the moment she passed. The student loan situation in the educational system as a whole, as far as expense, has gotten completely out of control. We have to have an education system where students can expect that they can graduate college without being burdened by hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, even tens of thousands of dollars of debt. You shouldn't walk out the door with a college degree that's worth less than your car. It should be worth a lot more than your car. It should be worth enough that you can live for the rest of your life with those skills that you have developed in college, as long as, of course, we keep expanding on those. Or again, making sure that we understand in this country that a college degree is not critical to life. So many jobs require 5 years of college education and then 5 years of experience. A lot of jobs don't need a college education. They need certifications, they need training, and they will be excellent paying jobs, but they do not need a college degree. We should forgive college. We should forgive college loans. We should forgive student loan interest entirely. And we should make sure that people can get what education they want to get for their career, not just what we tell them they need.
Thanks. And Joe?
Thank you, Matt. I'm not wholly sold on student debt forgiveness as a whole. It certainly answers a problem we had today, but it doesn't solve the problem that will return within several years. One of the education platforms I have, one of my planks, I advocate for a cap on interest rates for student loans, which I would tie to the prime rate of the Federal Reserve, the prime lending rate, which today is 0.25%. I would throw in a 0.5 percentage point to the banks for carrying the paperwork. And I would see to it that interest was capped at no greater than 1.5%. I would open up a refinance program for those who are carrying college debt to refinance under this new program, bring that monthly payment down, then work on targeted debt forgiveness for those jobs that we see are very much needed. Education. We need educators, teachers in the country. We've done a very poor job of supporting our educators. Clearly, they need a college degree to be in our schools, and we should make it not only affordable for them to earn that degree, but we should also tack on incentives to work in the field and stay in the field, and that includes some form of debt forgiveness. Physicians. We are 92,000 specialists shy of meeting the needs of the American healthcare consumer today. A great many of these jobs these holes are created because of the exorbitant cost of specializing. A physician today coming out of med school might carry as much as $300,000 in educational debt. To specialize, that might go up as high as $1 million. This is exorbitant. It is inhibitory for those who are talented enough to become specialists because of cost. So there are things that we can do. I am a Hoosier, though, and I do have a slightly more centrist view. I think that everyone should have some skin in the game. If you want a college degree, you should have access to those opportunities that would provide you a college degree without bankrupting you. So
Thanks,
yes,
Joe.
there's things we can do. Thank you.
Thanks. And going off of that, especially because this combines what we were talking about with jobs, income inequality, and the looming climate crisis that is getting ever closer, if we're not already in it right now. Can you commit, or do you support a Green New Deal? If so, why? And if not, give your reasoning and any replacements or what you plan to do about the climate catastrophe. And we'll start with Ben.
Absolutely. I support a Green New Deal. I support making sure that the environment is not just working for us, that we're working for the environment. We can see that just driving up I-65 up to Lafayette, the wind turbines generating power for Tippecanoe County and for Purdue are exceptionally valuable. We've created industry, we've created power just with that simple change, once you start looking further beyond that, you can see that even in the last few weeks, as so many of us have been actually responding to shelter in place, we can see little pieces of the environment starting to rebuild themselves. So we know that this is a problem that we can solve. It's not something that has become insurmountable. We have to take action. We have to take action now in reducing fossil fuel consumption and making sure that we are using clean, renewable energy sources. And by the way, that's going to create a lot of jobs. Many of those jobs, we will need people who are trained for, but not necessarily a college education. That's going to be a wonderful opportunity for a lot of people to get boots on the ground floor of a brand new industry, building clean energy for our future.
Thanks. Joe?
I absolutely do support a Green New Deal. I think the biggest pushback that I have seen to date is in the area of cost, and what I would see Congress doing to finance and create that financial engine that we would need to follow through on a Green New Deal is this: we need to create tax-free green bonds. We need to open up a tax-free green bond market. We need to open it up to investors, institutional investors, private investors. We need to open it up to entrepreneurs who can then invest in these green technologies, these green opportunities. There are some wonderful technologies out there that we should be employing today. And the reason we are not is because we have not funded a manufacturing base for these technologies. So there are things that we can do. We can literally use free market forces to drive the financial engine that would bring about the Green New Deal. It is proactive. It is an intelligent way to both save the environment, create these green new jobs. They will require higher education. They are a higher level skill job, so extensive training is going to be needed. But yes, we should support a Green New Deal. We should, though, as Congress, as representatives, create the financial engine, and that means starting with tax-free green bonds.
Thanks, Joe. And Veronica?
Absolutely, I support a Green New Deal. And, as for the question of cost, I'll take myself as an example. Recently, a couple of years ago, replaced all of the landscape lighting, the low voltage landscape lighting with LEDs, environmentally friendly. Basically, what they cost to put them in was paid for in energy savings in 6 months. So doing this, but how much will it cost? How much is it going to cost? It will actually save money, create jobs to institute this. We need to do this. A lot of the jobs will not require massive amounts of training. It's simply put a lot of the jobs that we already have now. This is stuff like green construction. So the people who are doing the construction, they know their jobs. It's a question of using different techniques, different materials. Simple, very simple to learn. I mean, I'm a woodworker myself. Believe me when I say that if you put something, a different piece of, give somebody, a person knows how to put up drywall, whether it's green board or blue board or regular old gypsum board, they know how to do it. It's just using a different type of insulation, different what have you, maybe a slightly different technique. People will know how to do that because people are intelligent. Workers know what they're doing. And so we can do a Green New Deal now, today, and for tomorrow. So yes, I support a Green New Deal because it's going to be better for our economy and for our workers. And it also provides for better, cleaner air and cleaner water, going back to healthcare.
Thank you. I have a lot more questions, but I do want to make a lot of time for people's questions that they've been asking in the chat. So this will be my last question. I'll do some important things that we want to highlight, and then we'll get to the audience questions so we can have time to make sure that document is ready to go. So my last question is, do you support creating a legal path for undocumented people to become lawful permanent residents and eventual citizens? And we'll start with Joe.
Absolutely. You know, I was just speaking with a family last night whose brother has been in detention in New Orleans under ICE detention for a year, and no one seems to know where he is in the legal process. And no one will speak to this family. No one, they're having trouble even being allowed to speak to their relatives. So this is the situation that we have. It's compounded when you add children to cages. There are certainly things that we should be doing. There is bipartisan support on immigration reform in both the House and the Senate. We just need leadership in both institutions to come to the table and hammer out the deal. We've kicked this around for decades, and this problem falls on the shoulders of both parties. The Democrats are no less guilty of obfuscating the arguments as our Republican friends. And it's time now to sit down and create these pathways. DACA students, we need them. DACA students are good Americans. They are educated, they are driven, they are wonderful, loyal Americans, and they should be made so. So there's no reason why we should not be doing this. We need the labor that's coming in. We also need to address what is called the Central American Triangle and the social issues going on in those areas that are driving people out of their countries and inspiring them to walk several thousand miles to cross our border. So we have a real problem in Central America, and we should be developing those foreign policies that address this issue. We will not see any of that from a Republican Senate. We certainly aren't going to see it from a Republican White House. It is my belief that the next president, who we now see will be Joe Biden, will work with both the House and the Senate to create a legislative package that will begin to resolve these immigration issues that are burdening so many countries on our border.
Thanks, Joe. Veronica?
Unless you are First Nations, we're all immigrants or children of immigrants. So there needs to be the systems that we have in place right now are few and far between. A lot of people will always say, well, just go and do it legally. A lot of times there is no legal pathway in effect right now for many of these people to follow through. So, I mean, we're a nation of immigrants. That's always been the teachings of how our country is. We're the melting pot. We take all comers. We bring everybody in together. So I have no issues with immigrants, and I mean, welcome to the shores. You know, give us your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Absolutely, immigration is how this country started. So immigrants just as welcome to live next door to me as anybody who's been an American for 3 generations. So
thank you. And Ben?
Absolutely. I've known several people. I've worked very closely on a day-to-day basis with several people who were legal permanent residents who wanted to become American citizens. And what they found was the process, even for them in IT jobs, in high-paying professions, high-prestige professions, the path to becoming a citizen was long and difficult. And the reality is we should have a much more streamlined process for everyone who wants to be a U.S. citizen. This is not just our high professionals. This is the people who work fields, the people who work in our kitchens. Everyone should be able to become a U.S. citizen. And by the way, that will bring people even more into the workforce, even more into the tax system. Let's be perfectly frank, and really even more into the devotion to the country. We have people who are fighting to get across into our borders so that they can have the opportunities that our citizens have. Why shouldn't we make that easier for them? Why shouldn't we make that less of a fight? This is just a matter of being exercising humanity to our fellow humans.
Thanks. I want to take this opportunity to thank for answering all my questions that I had here. I certainly have more, but I did want to leave a lot of room for people to ask them, so I'm hoping that there's some overlap with some of the questions we got in the chat. I'm going to take this opportunity to let Kirsten finish up, get all the questions from the chat right now, and give a little plugs for stuff we got going on or stuff we're promoting. So the first thing we have is we did a workshop a few weeks back about voting in the time of Corona. It's all online. It's on our website. We did that with 3 other groups, part of the Working Hoosiers Vote Coalition. That's YWTF, Surge, and Greater Lafayette Immigrant Allies. So if you want to file for your absentee ballot, which you can do now, especially in light of everything that has happened in Wisconsin, go to our website, check out our video. It has all the information you need, as well as a live document that has all the information about due dates, where to send your stuff, and more relevant information. Second thing is the Peoples Bailout. That's something we've been pushing to call your representatives about. Right now, we've seen 3 phases of stuff get passed, and we've seen a lot of corporate bailouts, large corporate bailouts, while individual people aren't getting that money. Even now, even the $1,200 nobody has seen. So there's 5 things that we're asking to call our representatives about. You can find more at thepeoplesbailout.org and more information on our Facebook and our website as well. Another thing is there's a local mutual aid group. There's a lot of people hurting right now, especially out of work, people who can't go to the store, people who are vulnerable. And there's a great mutual aid group on Facebook that we're asking people to, if you're healthy, if you're able, donate your time, donate your money. There's forms to fill out to volunteer. We have the website up on the screen right now. If you want to go to Facebook and type in Greater Lafayette COVID-19 Mutual Aid Response, all the information is there, and we're encouraging everybody to take part in that. And finally, tomorrow we have our virtual happy hour. If you're feeling a little despondent, if you're feeling stressed out, I'm sure a lot of us are. We've been hosting these every Friday at 6 o'clock. It's a Zoom call, so just ask us for the information about how to join in. It's not all about COVID. We're just trying to create a support network here, blow off some steam. We have some fun questions, and we encourage everyone who's on this and or tell people you might find that are interested in this and join us for our virtual happy hour tomorrow at 6 o'clock, and then every Friday from here until I guess we don't have to do it and we can do it in person again. So we're going to take some questions now from the chat. I'm going to look at the document, and we have one from Margaret Haas, and the question is, should people with Social Security numbers get health care? What's the plan for undocumented immigrants? And we'll start with Ben.
I think the ultimate goal is that everyone in the country should have health care. Again, I think that starting out with making sure that there is simply an option for people to pay in money to get into a public option is fantastic. But I think that should be open to everyone, regardless of if you have a Social Security number or not. I think the end goal is simply that everyone is covered, everyone has access to healthcare. There is simply no question about what we need to do to get access to it. Everybody has access, full coverage.
Thanks. Veronica?
I'm sure the question was asked because I'm the one that mentioned with being able to put Medicare for All into place right now, like tomorrow if we were to want to, and I had mentioned about Social Security numbers, use that as my example because of Medicare being based with the Social Security number. I was attempting to state that basically that's how we could get basically a Medicare card out to at least everybody with a social security number. We can get one out to everybody with every person who's an immigrant who doesn't yet have a social security number, someone with an I-10. But basically, that would be the way to do it. But yeah, it's basically should do it like any other one. You walk in, you have a medical emergency or a medical issue, you go into a doctor's office, it's done, it's paid for, end of question. I mean, if we wanted to do it if we needed to do some sort of identification card, if you will, like we currently have with health insurance, our health insurance cards and all of this stuff, basically it would be, create the Medicare card with the social security number, with the I-10 number, that sort of thing. The people that are currently undocumented, that's the sticking point right now. That's where we'd have to hammer it out. But I mean, for the most part, I mean, other countries like Canada, for example, you go into the clinic, you walk out without a bill. That's where it needs to be. But basically, that's going back to the Medicare for All. We could get it done tomorrow if we wanted to.
Thanks. And Joe.
The thing is, undocumented immigrants work. They're hard workers and they pay taxes. They pay consumer taxes, they pay federal taxes, they pay state taxes, comes out of their wages. They should have health care. Their taxes are going to go up by the same amount as yours or mine would. Those taxes are meant to pay for health care. We should not put them in a position where they are paying taxes for a benefit they're not receiving. Keeping people healthy is far cheaper in the long run than locking them out of a healthcare system and allowing them to get sick, which only adds added cost burden to the American consumers, the American taxpayers. So yes, we should develop a means of seeing to it that those without a social security number are indeed covered under a Medicare for All plan.
Thanks. And since that had to do with undocumented immigrants, we're going to take a question from Chris, and it's, can you commit to vote to defund ICE and CPB with the goal of abolishing ICE, closing the camps, and decriminalizing border crossings? And we'll start with Joe.
We absolutely need to stop the detention. I will go back to the Obama administration. A great many Democrats referred to him as the deporter in chief. When someone was detained under a Supreme Court agreement, they were detained no longer than, I believe it was 8 weeks, and then they were deported. Children were allowed to stay in the country provided there was a relative or family friend who would take custody of the child. We have created these detention centers. They are inhumane. They are now literally petri dishes for COVID-19. So we don't have the healthcare facilities in place. So yes, we need to end this detention. It is dangerous. It's taking lives. It's forcing families, forcing separation. We're watching children disappear into an adoption system where tracking is very poor, and a lot of these kids can't be found. So yes, we're going to shut down the detention centers. We're going to return ICE to its original mission. We are going to demilitarize ICE. These are things that need to be done. We can do things in a positive manner that don't involve brutality, that don't involve criminalization of decent people here in the United States. So yeah, we're going to return ICE to its original mission, and we're going to demilitarize them, and we are going to close those detention centers.
Ben?
As I said earlier, I think there needs to be a massively streamlined path to citizenship, which means that when people are fighting to get into this country, we should find a way to bring them into this country much easier. And by bringing them into the country, we shouldn't be putting kids in cages. That is about the least American thing that I can imagine. And it is happening with amazing regularity. under this administration. ICE needs to be completely torn down to the ground. And if we do need an organization to do immigration, we can build a new organization from the ground up to actually humanely help people come into the country and become citizens. The current situation has no business existing. It is simply a situation that exists to cause as much human misery as possible. Why does it still exist? It needs to be rebuilt, taken down, and made into a positive force for this nation.
And Veronica.
The question, I believe, was committing to defunding ICE and CBP with the goal of abolishing ICE. Is that correct?
Yep. Abolishing ICE, closing the camps, and decriminalizing border crossings.
Basically, can I commit to it? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I mean, basically, that's the question. Can I commit to it? Yes. Yes, I can.
All right. We'll take another question. Let's see. I think this was a follow-up to some of the right to work stuff. How does an employer negotiate some employees in the union and others not? I don't know how that would work. That's from Elaine. And we'll start with Veronica.
What was the question again?
How does an employer negotiate some employees in the union and others not? I don't know how that would work.
Well, the current situation is that basically what would happen is the unions would negotiate for their workers. Right now, where it is that unions negotiate generally for all the workers. Basically, if you're not in a union, you would be responsible for negotiating with your employer for your pay and your benefits on your own. That's how it would work. But that's what makes a union beneficial, and why I would support and fully support somebody joining a union if they feel it's in their best interest. I mean, I see it being in most people's best interests. We tried to put through other regulations, OSHA and other rules in place to deal with the problems that unions were long ago started for. But I mean, I personally, if I were in a job that a union existed in, I can honestly say I would gladly join that union, because of the fact that I wouldn't have to deal with doing the negotiation on my behalf. There would be somebody who's skilled in that negotiation doing it for me. So that's where it stands. But yeah, I mean, that's where it would be, was that the person would be responsible for negotiating themselves. Does it make sense to do it? No, which is why unions are a good thing. So,
Joe?
So, you can't have it both ways. What's going on under right to work today is people are allowed to, or unions are being forced to represent those who aren't paying union dues. I think that this is undermining both the strength of a union and the reason for a union. So understand, you can't have it both ways in a workforce. It doesn't work. I support strong unions. I support labor. If you look at our unions today, they are the last bastion of the middle class. They are standing on the wall. They are all that stands between us and an $8.50 an hour wage. When you speak to the unions, they understand the value of standing together, of working with employers. Unions have a vested interest in seeing to it their employers are profitable. Union companies make money. Unions work to see that that happens. Unions provide advanced training. Unions provide standardization and employee safety. Unions provide added benefits that perhaps are not negotiated into a union package. When you introduce right to work into this naturally occurring part of the economic ecosystem, you disrupt that ecosystem and it causes problems. So no, you can't have both union and non-union being represented when one employee is paying no union dues. Doesn't work.
Ben?
Well, I support having unions. The teachers union, whatever union is in existence, it is for the benefit of the workers. The union should not be forced to negotiate for people who aren't a member of the union. Now, if someone wanted to go outside of that and negotiate on their own, okay, that's perfectly fine. But the union shouldn't be responsible for for improving their lot in life. That's what the unions are there for, to improve their members. So I suppose if a teacher really wanted to go outside of the teachers union and negotiate a different rate, they'd be okay to do that. But that's what being a part of the union is for. It's to get the best rate for everyone possible in that industry. So I absolutely 100% support our unions. Let's keep them strong.
Thanks. These next three questions are all kind of related, but I'll start with this one. This is from Diane. The Democrats got creamed in 2018. I think they mean in Indiana, at least. Is there a way to harness the resources of young adults, many of whom must be pretty disillusioned with their Indiana congressional representatives by now? And we will start with Ben.
Well, I certainly hope so. A lot of the young people who have been at our universities have now gone home. Hopefully most of them are still in the district, and hopefully a lot of them are tuned in here and listening to us and are going to be making sure to register to vote by absentee. I've also made sure to have a link on my site, f4t4.com, to go register for absentee voting. But we have to tap into the youth vote. We have to tap into the blue wave that I really hope is happening to make sure that we can make some of these progressive policies come into light. Quite frankly, government should be here to help us. And as this pandemic has shown, we have representatives and a president who hate government. It means that we have a situation like our current government. This is the same as if you put pyromaniacs in charge of the fire department. You can only expect to watch the world burn.
Joe?
So, can you repeat that question for me, Matt?
Sure.
On this.
Yeah, the Democrats got creamed in 2018 locally in Indiana. Is there a way to harness the resources of young adults, many of whom must be pretty disillusioned with their Indiana congressional representatives by now?
Well, and we did. We took a whooping in large portions of the state. Tippecanoe County is an exception to that. We have a very active Democratic base in Tippecanoe County. What advice would I give to a younger voter? We recently, here yesterday, Bernie Sanders suspended his presidential campaign. I am an avid Bernie Sanders supporter. I believe in a lot of his policies. I've supported a lot of those policies. It was my intention to go into the voting booth here in May and vote for my Democratic candidates of choice. And it is my commitment to return to that booth, the voting booth, in November, and see to it that the Democratic candidates my party has chosen are voted for. So we are literally at a point here now where we suffer the disappointment of our favored candidate, but must look to the future. And it becomes eminently more important now to focus on those down ballot races where progressives are running, and you must go out and support those progressives. This is how a fight stays alive. This is the revolution Bernie talks about. The revolution doesn't exist in Bernie Sanders alone. The revolution exists around the ideas that he has promoted. Those ideas are still being promoted. They're being promoted by candidates like myself. So we need all the help we can get. If you want progressive policies out of Washington, you must see to it that progressive politicians are elected. So I need your help. You can go out to joeforhoosiers.com. You can reach out to us. We have 45 people in the district right now on the phones, phone banking across the district. We're sending out mailers. We're doing everything we can to focus on GOTV. So you can help. Younger voters, we need your help. You are everything that we are fighting for today. You are the future, and you must have your voice. So find the candidates that match what you want your voice to say and get out there and support them. This is democracy in action.
Thanks, Joe. This is the plug section, I guess. I will give everybody time for plugs, I promise, so you can get all the information out there. And Veronica for this question.
Well, one thing that we've seen in the past 30 years, if you follow politics, what is known as the Overton window has been shifting to the rightward, rightward. Unfortunately, so you have modern so-called centrists who, if you compare their policies to back in the 70s, Richard Nixon looks downright progressive to them with the policies that he supported. What you need, the youth vote, they're obviously strongly progressive. So unfortunately, you've seen, as Joe mentioned, with Bernie Sanders, was extremely a progressive policy. He's merely suspended his campaign. His name will still be on the ballot. So by all means, do vote for him if he's your choice, because all we can do is pull that Overton window back to the left, back progressive. I have said that last time, back in 2018. I made the joke. It was like, well, technically I'm running for Congress, but in reality I'm running for progress. Pro's the opposite of con. So to the youth vote, the youth is extremely progressive. So by all means, get out there, vote for the progressive candidates. If you don't think I'm progressive enough, then obviously don't vote for me. But if you think I'm progressive, then vote for me. Since we're on the plug time, you can find me on Facebook or Twitter. Both places I'm Zol4 Indiana 4. That's the letter, the number 4, IN-4 again. I think I've got underscores on my Twitter handle. But you'll find me there. That's where I'm at. I'm the small budget campaign out here. I don't have the big budget. I don't have the fancy websites. I'm working class, and that's who I'm working for. So
thank you. So because you're all running for the same position, not everybody can get it. One of you will get that in the primary. So if you're not the candidate, what are your next steps to make a difference? Will you run for local office in the next election? What are your plans, provided that that doesn't happen? And we'll start with Veronica.
Right now I am focused on this. I've not figured out what my future plans are. I'm focused right now on the here and now. I'm gonna fight for, what I can fight for. I'm firmly in support of Medicare for all. I'm firmly in support of Green New Deal, and I can say that if I don't win the election, I'm going to be clamoring and haranguing whoever does win this election to make sure that they're and hounding them, that they're my representative will be hearing from me that basically support these things, these things, because that's what's important. But right now, I'm not looking forward for any other elections at this point in time. Right now, I'm focused here and now on 2020.
Ben?
Well, of course, I have thought about it. If I don't win the nomination, the first thing is my support will be 100% behind whoever does. So we need to get someone who is a Democrat, who is progressive, who actually is intelligent and who has a care for government in mind. And with that, I would be supporting whoever the nominee is if it's not myself. And if it's not myself, I will look toward running toward for a local office as well. I believe that I've spoken to the Hendricks County chair, and there's some potential to get on a local ballot. But my focus right now is on the election for June 3rd.
Thanks. And Joe?
Well, Matt, we're committed to getting Democrats elected across the state, not just the 4th Congressional District. I have been out and supported Democratic candidates, both following the congressional election 2 years ago. I supported Toby Beck. I supported a number of down ticket races here in the 4th and indeed around the state, trying to bring attention to the issues that Democrats are running on. We saw some success in our efforts in 2016. We saw success in 2018. We saw Veronica Padril in Greencastle elected to the city council. Veronica is the first transgender woman to be elected to public office. She won by a landslide. She won by a landslide in an area, in a county that Donald Trump carried by 70% of the vote. She won by a landslide, the largest margin any race had won by in Greencastle in the history of Putnam County. So, you know, Democrats are winning out there. We're watching them win races. We can continue to win races. It's my intention to support those candidates who do come out of the primary. I believe that electing Democrats up and down the ballot is important. I believe that we can do a great deal more for the state and the country if we are in office. So yes, I intend to win my race. I intend to win the general, and I intend to see to it that Democrats are given a voice up and down the state. So my plans are pretty much ensconced. They're not new. I have been living this for the last several years, and I don't have any intention of stopping one way or the other.
Thanks. And for the last question from here, and then we'll do plugs and closing statements. Because we promoted mutual aid and a lot of stuff going on right now, especially with people hurting, with their futures uncertain at the moment. I'd like to know what experiences and successes you've all had to improve your community in the past. What are some things you've done to improve your local community, your local state? It's not, it's not a very specific policy issue, but I do think it's important to know how we treat our communities, especially when we're electing people. So we'll start with Ben.
Well, for one, I've often been involved directly working with nonprofits. For most of the last 10 years, I worked for Goodwill of Central and Southern Indiana, and a lot of that focusing on helping improve the school system there. For those of you who aren't aware, Goodwill runs the Excel Centers, which are adult high schools throughout the state of Indiana, designed to help folks who had some trouble in their youth. Potentially that was with drugs or criminal problems, anything like that. It's to help them get a proper high school education, a high school degree, and advance in both their earning potential and continue in their education should they want to. So I helped a tremendous amount get the Excel Centers going. I was there practically on day one when the Excel Center was founded, running a lot of the IT infrastructure. For the last 2 years, I have not been quite as active because, again, I have spent a lot of that time mourning the passing of my wife. But I intend to be a lot more active in the community and making sure that those kind of policies continue and that we continue to make sure that everything is improved, that the world is improved on a community level as well as a state level.
Veronica?
For 20 years, I worked with a local government agency that was doing household hazardous waste cleanup. So I was using my hazmat training for that. keeping toxic chemicals out of people's houses, cleaning it up from that. That's where I've been in my county. That's hence the clean up the waste. I mean, quite literally did that for a number of years. Outside of that, other than last election back in 2018, I realized that that's why I jumped into the ring. I noticed that there weren't enough working class people. The people who were running for office generally were, lawyers and money men and all of that, and wealthy elites that so out of touch from the working class people. That's why I've put myself out there. And as I said, I'm going to keep fighting for the stuff that's gotten me in here now to get to fight for working class people. So,
Joe?
Matt, I spent nearly 30 years working in a factory. I'm a machinist, a retired machinist. Tammy and I lost 2 children to 2 different cancers in a span of just 30 months. I have retired from my machinist job. My wife and I founded a small pediatric cancer foundation. We're all volunteer. We support pediatric cancer families across the state of Indiana, and we support genomic and genetic research, pediatric specific, being conducted today at Riley Children's Hospital in Indianapolis. We're very proud of the work we've done. We have grown to love these families. We have comforted those who have lost their child, and we have cheered those whose child remains alive. The needs that these children have does not end when treatment is over. Most often the challenges in their post-treatment life continue. Learning disabilities as a result of the chemicals that were used in the course of treatment. We see down the road late stage treatment effects that these children will suffer in their adult years. So there's a great deal of work to be done. There's more that needs to be done in the way of pediatric health. I have had to leave our foundation to mount this campaign, and that breaks my heart because I have to now be very careful. What I can tell you today is this: the Riley Children's Foundation has started a fund called Relief Fund, the Riley Children's Foundation Relief Fund, and it is to help those families whose children are suffering acute and chronic diseases, who have lost their jobs as a result of this COVID-19 pandemic. So, we're out here trying to do these things to help these families whose needs were great before the pandemic and are now exacerbated beyond belief. So there's lots of work to do, both in politics and in our private community. I take great pride in our all-volunteer foundation and the work we're doing.
Thanks, Joe. We're going to let the candidates have their closing remarks. I just want to remind people, again, to check out our website for information on how to get your absentee ballot. It's not just these candidates who are on the ballot. There's a lot of local candidates who are running for office who you definitely should check out, should vote for. Make sure your ballot's in there. Don't let this specific event stop you from exercising your voice. Get that absentee ballot, get it in early, get it in now. I also want to thank Becky and Kirsten for helping me out during you don't see them, they're off camera, but Becky's been our timekeeper. Kirsten's been there gathering all the questions for me. If we didn't get to your question, I'm very sorry. I encourage you to reach out to the candidates yourself, get these questions answered. I know there's a lot of really, really important stuff that we didn't get to cover, and I know all of these issues matter to everyone. So without further ado, I want to give the closing remarks here to, we'll go in reverse order that we did last time. So we'll start with Veronica.
Oh, is it okay? I just, once again want to thank Lafayette Indivisible for hosting this virtual town hall. Great great questions from both from them and the few from the audience members. Again, you can find me Zol4 Indiana 4, both on Facebook and Twitter. By all means, you got a question that, if anything that I've posted hasn't been out there, by all means, send it to me. When you send in a question to Zol4 Indiana, for my campaign, it's not being answered by some staffer. It's being answered by me. You're looking at candidate, campaign manager, PR person, everybody. I'm a one gal show. So, you've got a question, you're basically asking me. So, Zol4 Indiana, Indiana 4, clean fix build. So
Thanks.
thank you.
Joe?
Thank you. Thank you to Lafayette Indivisible, to my fellow candidates for showing up tonight. It's been a wonderful experience. You can find out more about me at joeforhoosiers.com. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. You can reach out to us. We have 45 people working on our campaign, but I make phone calls. So if you reach out to us and you tell us that you want Joe Mackey to call you, I will call you. We're very proud. We have conducted a great deal of outreach. Our website now can be read in Spanish. We have been endorsed by leaders in the Muslim community here in the 4th Congressional District, the Jewish community, the Catholic community. We are reaching out across a broad array of Democrats and Republicans. And we are bringing them together because they understand healthcare matters, public school education matters, our environment matters. These are no longer being issues that are confined to party. These are across all sections of the country, and nobody is missed in these issues. So we're starting to see now a real movement on the part of voters who are interested in these issues and want to see these issues resolved. We're reaching out to them. We're asking them to help us. We believe we are on the right track with the answers. I'm very proud of the people who have come to the table who are working for my campaign. They're making calls every day. We have 45 working today, but we bring in several a week. We could be up as high as 60, but because of the pandemic, we're not doing much or anything really in the way of door-to-door canvassing. But as soon as this pandemic is over, we will have a lot of volunteers that we're going to go out and hit the streets and knock on doors and talk to people face-to-face. I appreciate these mediums, but I enjoy face-to-face opportunities much more. We're out there. I hope you reach out. I hope you visit our website. I hope you will join us. And together we'll build that coalition necessary to win the race here in the 4th Congressional District and make our voices heard on the floor of the United States House of Representatives. Thank you.
Ben?
Also, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Of course, on the web, of course, and unfortunately, we can't be together in public. We're just here on the internet. But thank you for reaching out on the internet and joining us. Please reach out to me via the website, f4t4.com. That's F4, the letter 4, the number 4, and then T4, the number 4. So just f4t4.com. Also, it's going to be me answering unless it's my campaign manager, who is just my roommate, one of my old college friends. So we're a campaign of 2, and we are trying to do a lot of hard work. So I hope this has been really enlightening to everyone listening tonight, and I hope it's helped to move the discussion forward. So as I said earlier, when you put pyromaniacs in charge of the fire department, you can only expect to watch the world burn. This is why we need to put people in charge of the government who believe that government can make things better, not that government hurts us. Not people who hate government. People who know that we can make things better with appropriate policies, not people who think we make things worse. So I just want to say again, thank you to everyone. Please reach out. I'm happy to have some volunteer opportunities. we can do whatever we can. And I'm also going to say, I pledge, no matter what, we're going to vote blue. We're going to make sure that we take this seat back, whoever the nominee is.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us, whether you're like on the web, our candidates here. I want to have thank you to everybody who submitted questions. Huge shout out to everybody in Lafayette Indivisible who helped put this together with questions, with organization, with logistics. It's a huge undertaking, and it takes so many more people than just me on screen. So I want to thank everybody for that. If you have any comments or questions about how this went, we definitely want to do stuff like this in the future, and we want to improve. Send those to email@LafayetteIndivisible.com or on our Facebook page or on our Instagram or on our Twitter. We're everywhere, and you can get a hold of us. This video will be on our YouTube site, on our website, and on the Facebook page afterwards. And we just want to thank everybody out there for contributing in any way you can. And please go get your absentee ballot. Join us tomorrow for a virtual happy hour. It'll be very unstructured, and it'll be fun. So I hope everyone has a good evening, and goodbye.